Good morning, everyone. This is the second part of contracts classes. So Helene Keddington will be hosting it today, going over the second part of the purchase agreement. So Helene, if you want to take it away.
I sure will. Good morning, everyone. Many of you know me. For those that don't, I am the manager down here at Channel Islands and Hollywood Beach. Been in the business for 37 years, and I also list and sell. So I'm out there in the trenches with you guys and doing this on a daily basis. The first section, I'm going to just go paragraph by paragraph, and we will try to, because we have a lot of documents to cover, but the first one is very important to me, and I want you to really understand this. The first one, they are talking about if the property is located in a condominium or planned development. Your client will receive HOA documents that escrow will order and FedEx to their home. If a seller happens to say, or you hear from the seller's agent, oh, my client has the documents, they only bought the house a few years ago, let's use those so they don't have to pay for them, that is not going to happen. You cannot do that. The HOA docs have to be ordered through escrow so they're current, so you don't miss anything, and have to be sent to the client directly. When they receive those, it's important for you not to go over them with them. If they have questions, they can contact the management company, but it is important for you to tell them, please read your documents. Let me tell you why. There are several restrictions that come up that may very well affect your client wanting to buy there. Examples, the 4 that are very important to me are pet restrictions. Many of the HOAs only allow a certain size and amount of pets. If you have 4 dogs and they allow 3, which one is going? Or if you have, like me, a big pit bull mix and they say 35-pound dog, then what? So it is very important. The second one is parking. Many communities, even though they have a driveway, they allow you to park in the driveway only during the day. Seabridge is one of those. Those people pay $2 million for those homes, but at night they must put their car in the garage. So that's important to know. Can you leave your vehicle outside all night or not? Also, how many vehicles can you have? Because there are places where we just had this happen. One of my agents sold a condo in Camarillo. Well, she wrote the offer, and as we were speaking, I said, you know what? They have very limited parking there. And she said, well, they have parking right outside the unit. And I said, your clients can't park their kids' cars there. That's only for guests. Well, lo and behold, the client had to withdraw her offer because of that, because of parking. The new one that has come up is smoking on balconies. A lot in Thousand Oaks area, I have found. Many people cannot smoke on balcony. If they are a big smoker and they don't want to go out to the parking lot, that's not where they're going to want to buy. And a real big one is renting your unit. If your client is buying to rent the property, they need to be sure they're going to be allowed to do that. Some communities only allow X amount of rentals in them. And if they're at their peak and your client has bought a condo, say they live in Spanish Hills and they've bought a 1-bedroom condo as a rental, and they close escrow and the management company says you can't rent it, now you have a problem because they're not going to want to move from Spanish Hills to their little 1-bedroom condo. So please, please have your clients read the HOA docs. That is very important. Again, don't decipher them for them. Have them contact the HOA if they have questions. Second section is condition of the property. Here in California, homes are sold as is, although buyer does have inspection rights. They have a time frame also to do those inspections, which we're going to cover, and they must be done in a timely manner. If you wait and allow the time to pass, you may have cost your client the ability to have that inspection. So it is advised by us to have their client do the inspection. We do have a form we're going to go over in later part of these classes. If they do say, no, I don't want to do it, I opt out, I'm just going to have my friend walk through the house, great. You're going to have them sign that form because we advise them to do an inspection. Buyer's investigation of property and matters affecting the property. That is a contingency of the agreement. Again, they have a time frame, they have to do it. The seller needs to provide the home where they have utilities. That is the seller's responsibility. You need to check and make sure before you have a home inspector go out there that the utilities are on. That's the water, the gas, the electric. Especially if it's a vacant property, often the gas is not on for safety, and you need it on for your client, because if the inspector comes out and he does the inspection and one of the utilities is not on, for example, gas, he's going to have to come back and he's going to charge your client again. So please make sure that the client does go to the property, that the utilities are on there. And while they're there, they can't do anything intrusive either. If they're going to have a home inspector and then they want to have their own termite guy, their termite person can't go breaking up. They have poke hole things that they use. They need to be very respectful of the seller's property and not do any damage to the property while they're doing inspections. Number B is the seller has to make it available. Like we said, they have to have the utilities turned on. The buyer shall make sure they keep it clean and there's no damage incurred while they're there. The seller, again, is responsible to be sure that everything is ready to go. So, but again, folks, do not let the time periods pass for this. If your client wants an inspection and you've put in there 17 days, you make sure you get the inspectors right out there, because you don't want to have them lose the ability to have their home inspection. Number 13, title investing. The title policy is provided. It is for your client to know that the home there are no liens affecting the property and you will be able to close on this. We had a while back, it wasn't too recent, we had a community that was fairly new. The builder did not pay some of the contractors, and there were contractor liens for concrete on this property. And all of a sudden my agents were running to me and saying, what is in this? What is this? I said, this has to be cleared or we're not closing. So I suggest to all my people, read your title policy, make yourself familiar when it says in there. If you have questions, go to your manager and say, what does this mean that there's a lien? Some easements are acceptable. Utility companies have easements, but if there's a lien in there for someone not paying for something, it has to be cleared. So make sure you do take a look at that, learn what the title is. We've had classes on title. We can have more classes where title people come in and talk to you about title. At the close of escrow, buyer receives the deed. The deed that you're if they get in the mail is kind of like a pink slip to your car. You take it, you put it in a safe place, and that shows your ownership in the home. So that is important for them to, a lot of times they'll come running and they'll say, what is this number circled up at the top? It says transfer tax. That's already been paid. That's been paid through escrow. You just have your client take that deed and file it in a safe place. Let's see here. Are we at the, how are we doing questions, Karen? Did Karen leave us?
No questions at this time, Helene.
Okay, thank you. Okay, guys, time periods. Number 14. It is very important that you pay attention to these. What I suggest you do, I have a day planner on my desk. And if you open an escrow, day 1 starts the day after it's opened, and count out the days on your calendar. The seller has blank amount of days to deliver all those reports that the client needs. We're going to go through what those are. The buyer has 17 days or whatever you've written in to do investigations. Put those dates on your calendar, mark them so you don't miss them. It's really important. With number 2 is within the time period specified, buyer may request repairs. Now, just so you understand, buyer can request anything they want, but again, a home is sold as is. But buyers do make requests, and you're going to have requests. But it's not a fix-it list for the seller to redo the entire home. So try to pick your battles, and the things that are important, I usually tell my people, anything that's a safety or health issue is something that you want to request. If GFIs are needed, or if there's wires hanging in the garage, or something that we've had, this happens not often, but does happen. The hot and cold are reversed in the showers. You want that fixed. Can you imagine a child getting in and turning on the water and it comes out scalding? So there will be some things you can ask for, but it's not just it's not a piece of paper to redo the entire home. Removal of contingencies, number C. This is a box that you don't mark while you're writing your offer because you want the contingencies. The buyer is not removing contingencies. Once in a great while, you will have an investor buyer that says, I'm buying this home with no appraisal, all cash, and I'll remove all contingencies right now. But normally, you leave that box alone and they're not removing that contingency. That you want that in place. You want the buyer to have all their contingencies to go through for their loan, their appraisal, and all their inspections. So don't remove them at the time of writing your contract. Seller's right to cancel. The seller can deliver a notice to a buyer if the buyer, it's called a notice to perform, if the buyer is not doing what they are supposed to do. They must give the notice first. That is important. They must give the notice, they must give the time frame, and after that, if they don't do what they're supposed to do, the buyer can be canceled. So you need to pay attention to the notice to perform if you receive one. It will be another very important. If someone is sending you something, if you guys are getting forms or you're delivering forms, don't just send them over in an email and hit send and you're done. Make sure that you are receiving or make sure they're in receipt of, because some of these documents are time sensitive. It is very important to make sure that they have received it. And especially your offer. I have agents send offers on my listings. I never hear from them. An offer comes through. I reply and say, I'm in receipt of this. But they never ask me, they just send it. So that's not really doing your client a service. You want to make sure you have the best chance of getting your offer in and seen and accepted. Number F is effective buyer's removal of contingencies. Unless other specified, buyers shall be deemed to have completed when they do the removal, when the time period comes. They are saying that they've done their inspections, they've reviewed the reports, they have their appraisal in, their loan is ready to go, and they're removing their contingencies. Sometimes they're removed all at once. Often you just remove your inspection contingency first, then your appraisal, and then your loan will come at the end, the final loan approval. Number G is close of escrow. If before the close, anyone can cancel. Buyer can cancel, seller can cancel only if buyer is not performing. The seller does not have the same cancellation rights, folks, as a buyer. We have had so many recently, I don't know what's happening. Sellers just go, I've decided I'm not selling my home now. That can be an issue because once you sign a listing agreement and you enter into a contract, the law is assuming that you wanted to sell this home, so the buyer is the one who has the contingencies, not the seller. So if the seller does that to you, I mean, we try to protect our client and do what we can to see if we can get them out of it and have them pay for whatever cost the buyer has laid out money. But just remember, the buyer is the one who has the contingency periods, not the seller. The seller can cancel if the buyer is not performing. Okay, if they're not removing their contingencies in a timely manner, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, but the seller does not just have automatic, I'm gonna just cancel. Do we have questions on page 2?
We have one question from Sarah. The question is, what is the best method? And I think she's asking, what's the best method when you send something to get confirmation they have it?
Some people have a flag on their email, Sarah. I personally have them send me back an email. I don't want just a flag that I can read to say they read it. And many agents have that. I have an agent right now that does that. She says, I have the flag that says they read it. I want an email back. If you have it in writing that you got my offer, then I'm good. So that's what I would suggest. I always want a response. It doesn't take that hard. Just you send an offer and someone just types back received, and that is sufficient. Then I feel good that I did the best thing for my client and I got their offer to the other agent. Does that help? Does that answer that question for you? I'm hoping it does. If it doesn't, hit me back up again. Okay, oops.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Number 15, final verification of condition. Okay, this is the walkthrough. This is not a contingency of the sale. It is a courtesy for the buyer. You don't, when you go through for your walkthrough, you're not going through for another 2 hours to go through an inspection of the house. You've already had your home inspection by then. You're going through to make sure the home is in the same condition as what you purchased and that repairs, number 16, have been completed. Not, let's go through the whole house and take 2 hours. This is normally a 30-minute, 20-minute thing. If there was no work to be done, then you are just walking through. What I always check is to make sure there's no broken windows, because as people are moving and windows get broken, or there's no leaks that just came up. So those are important things, but it's not a full home inspection again, okay? It is just a courtesy walkthrough for your buyer and to make sure repairs have been done. Number 17 is prorations of taxes. This is going to be done in escrow. Escrow will make sure that the seller pays up until the date of closing. The buyer will pay from then on. They will make sure the taxes are prorated that way. HOA fees are prorated. Any Melrose fees are prorated. That will be done, and it will be handled directly between buyer and seller, and they will credit one and debit the other. If you have questions on how that works, absolutely ask your manager, ask me, ask any of us. Even though I'm running this right now today, we're all here for you. All the managers at Everest will help you at any time. If one is not available, call the other one, because we all work as a team. Compensation, seller or buyer or both. Typically the seller pays the compensation. Important thing too, agents have called me and said, hey, should I put this in there? In my compensation is not put into the offer in any way. You're not writing in. We have separate forms for that. If for any reason you don't belong to a board, we have a separate compensation form to use, but it's not made a part of the offer. Scope of duty, buyer and seller acknowledge that the broker does not decide what price buyer should pay and seller should accept. And this is important. You're going to have people say, well, what should I write for my offer? I don't tell them that, especially in today's market, because some of these people are paying $20,000 and $50,000 over list. Now, I don't want to say, oh, I don't think it's worth that much, and have them not get the property and they say, I offered what you told me to. This has to be, you can advise them, you can show them the comparable sales, you can explain the way the market is, but don't tell them what they should write the offer for. Also, you definitely want to not give tax advice to clients, okay? Never, ever, this is like a mortal sin for my people. I tell them, never give them tax advice. We have the names of tax attorneys we give out. We have the county assessor's office we give out. Stay away from, especially on a 1031 exchange, when a client is exchanging one property for another and there can be tax ramifications. Let them get that information. We have a little bit of knowledge, and we may have a lot of knowledge, but we want them to get that information from their tax person so they can never come back and say, well, you told me. Because on a 1031 exchange, folks, one little mistake can cost them thousands of dollars. So we're realtors, but we're not tax people. Okay, number 19 is the representative capacity form. Whenever you're not signing your name as you have to use this form. My home is in a trust. The name of my trust is the Jewel Family Trust. Jewel was a pit bull that I love dearly, and she passed away. I named my trust after her, so basically she owns my little house. But so if I have to sign a paper, I'm signing as the Jewel Family Trust, not Helene Keddington. So I must use this form. We're going to go over this later. If the buyer is not signing as themselves, they're using it. If the seller is not signing as themselves, they're using it. So just remember that if someone is not signing, if you have a client and they say, oh, everything we're buying is in our trust, then you're going to get that information and you're going to use this form. Joint escrow instructions. Our contracts are given to escrow and they actually type up a set of instructions and they go off of what we have provided them. When you send in your offers, make sure, I'm sure Fred has already gone over this in like page 2 of the contract, you include the Everest addendum because they have to put that into the instructions, that our Everest addendum is part of the contract. So this is important. Escrow is going to do this. Escrow is an uninterested third party for those of you that are brand new in this business. They're in charge of getting the information from us, from the lender, from the title, from everyone. They put it all together and they're in charge of the closing. So we have All Valley Escrow. Pick one of our officers that you super like. I have been using Therese. They're all good. And pick one and stay with them and build a relationship and they will help you. And if it's your first escrow, they'll guide you through. Next page. Okay, now this is important. The one I'm going to really hit on is number 21, breach of contract, and then we go into liquidated damages, okay? When your client signs this contract, oops, did we have questions? I'm sorry, Fred. Did we have questions on the last page?
Nope, you're doing great. Okay.
When your client signs this is a binding contract, okay? This is real. And if your client I had this happen one time. They got all the way through and the lady called and she goes, my husband said he's not going to buy the house now. The last week, he went and bought a new truck. And I said, I hope he loves his truck because it just cost him a $10,000 extra deposit because he's going to lose his money. I mean, you have to take this seriously. So if they breach, when you have contingencies, your client is still covered. While they have inspection contingency, loan contingency, appraisal contingency, as long as they have an open contingency like that, the buyer can cancel. If they've removed all their contingencies, the seller assumes they are going forward and purchasing. If they don't, the seller can keep up to 3%, no more than 3%. It doesn't automatically go to the seller though. We have agents that are going, okay, we're canceling the buyer and my seller's getting the deposit. That's not how it works. Escrow must have the same instruction. The buyer must sign, the seller must sign to give back or keep the deposit. If they get conflicting instructions signed, the money's going to sit there. I have, in many cases, had to negotiate 50-50, give the seller half back, give the buyer half back, and everybody go on their way and be happy. But it is binding once you've removed contingencies. That's why you want to be very careful to remove your client's contingencies. If you are newer in the business, speak to your manager. I tell them to come to me, let me see what point you are in this contract and if you're good to remove the contingencies. Here is the mediation clause. If their clients sign this, and some people don't want to mediate, but they agree to mediation here, so that before they go to court or arbitration, they're agreeing to try to mediate. And it's a good thing. You try to save the cost of lawsuits and court and time, especially now with the COVID and everything. Trying to get into court is just a nightmare. But this is mediation where you actually sit in front of someone and they try to hash out who's right, who's wrong, how do we make everybody happy here and let people go on with their lives. So I went too far. It's a good thing. Arbitration is where you agree to go to arbitrate with someone rather than going to a court of law. I have had people often, especially attorneys, refuse to sign this clause. Both parties must sign to make it valid. If your buyer signed this and the seller refused, you don't have an arbitration clause because everybody needs to sign and agree to everything in this contract. So that's important, okay? Arbitration, liquidated damages. They are the damages that your client incurs, the seller, if they just walk from this contract. Do we have questions?
Oh, we have one from Anna, and I don't know if she typed it as you were explaining it, but you want to know, what if one party will not sign or initial?
And yeah, then you have to have, everybody has to agree to things here. So if they're refusing, then you need, I have had it though where they missed it. Many people miss the middle of those pages. They get the back up there. They get the contract and they just sign at the bottom, and they miss this page. And so I have had agents go back and ask, and the agent said, oh my gosh, you know what? I sent a DocuSign and I missed it. All right, I'm sorry. And they will sign it. But if they don't sign it, you don't have anything binding unless it's agreed to between both parties. So that is important. Again, go to your manager if they come back to you, and if the buyer wants something and the seller says no, or vice versa, then you don't have a deal. And that's what we're going to use counteroffers for, which we will go over next.
And I just wanted to add that I think it's really important to understand what Helene touched on, as the escrow has to draw up a cancellation of escrow to return the deposit. And it's really important for your buyer and seller to understand what to expect, that money just cannot be released automatically from escrow because the seller or buyer wants to cancel. And if a seller doesn't understand that going into the transaction and something happens, they're going to be very upset with you because they're going to go, well, I want the deposit because they didn't perform. And you're going to say, well, you can't just get the money back, and they're refusing to sign the cancellation instructions. That seller is going to be unhappy because that expectation wasn't set from the get-go. And then what happens if you do get in a situation where one of the two parties doesn't agree to sign that cancellation instruction? As Helene mentioned, you can negotiate it out. That's what usually happens if one doesn't release the money. So you can negotiate it out, but maybe it comes to a total standstill. Then what happens? Well, it's at a standstill because escrow cannot do anything as a neutral third party. They have to take a mutual instruction. So what would happen at that point is that money would sit in escrow. And basically the escrow company would at some point in time refer it to their attorney. They would contact the buyer and seller, give them an opportunity to negotiate it out, and advise if they don't, that they would then send it to court for an interpleader. And that means that it goes to court and a judge will look at the facts and a judge will decide who's going to get the money. That doesn't usually happen, but it does happen occasionally when people can totally not come to a meeting of the minds. Most of the time, particularly in a hot market like this, people just want out of it and it'll get worked out. But worst case scenario, that happens occasionally.
And there's one more question, Helene. Robbie would like to know, in arbitration, does the agent have to go also?
I have had arbitration for my clients. I have not had to go. Unless, Karen, have you been in one? I have never had to go to an arbitration myself.
It depends on if we're named or not.
Yeah, I have never been named.
Or if we're brought in as a witness. If you're not, then no. But usually if we have situations like that, it goes to Charlene as the broker of record because she handles the risk management situations. And usually she would go and with the agent if that's the situation.
And I think she has done that. Yes, I have not had, I have had to go to court. I've had to go with our agents to small claims court. And that was quite interesting, where even the judge said, why do you have the agents in here? This is not between the agents. This is between you and so at least he was someone that knew the real estate laws. Okay, guys, this is number 23. This is important. Brokers do not guarantee the performance of any vendors or providers, whether referred or not. Buyer and seller may select any provider they choose. Now, we have our own companies that we certainly want to use, But if someone has an issue with that, or we cannot steer them in a certain direction, we cannot say you must use this or you must do that. I usually give them 2 or 3 names, usually 3 for home inspectors, and let them make their own choice, because if somehow the inspector missed something and they get in that house, they're going to come back and go, you gave me him, you told me to use him. So it's always good to give them a few names, let them call, get prices, let them make the decision, so it does not come back on you or on the company. Number 24, brokers, we report to the MLS everything that we have to the MLS, unless they tell us to hold it from MLS. If your client, we're going to go into this in a little bit, if your client tells you I don't want things, there is a box to mark when you list a property. It is not the right thing to do. We want all the agents working for us, but some people want to just office exclusive. They don't want to be in multiple listing. So we'll go over that at a later time. Attorney fees, prevailing parties often get to collect attorney fees. That's why you don't want to have to be going to court if you don't have to. Assignment. This just came up last night with one of my agents. They got an offer on one of their properties, and it said Mr. and Mrs. Jones or assignee. No, you don't know who that is. That is not the best way to go. I, on my listings, don't take assignee. That's stating that they can, Mr. and Mrs. Jones are purchasing, but they may assign during escrow someone else to be the buyer. Some people do work with that, but if you're not familiar with it, go to your manager, because typically you want to know who your buyer is. You want them to be pre-qualified ahead of time, especially in the multiple situation we are in. Again, properties are one of my agents just got 13 offers on one of their listings. I mean, that's crazy. And it was going out 50,000 over. Equal housing opportunity that we all comply by. Everyone knows that. They did real estate law. We do not discriminate in any way about anything in our business. Number 28, terms and conditions. This explains it's an offer to purchase, liquidated damages, arbitrations are incorporated. Number 29, time is of the essence. Again, this is important. You want to do everything you do in a timely manner. If you write an offer, here's another example, and you put in there, you want an answer within 24 hours. And the listing agent contacts you and says, we're going to need 2 more days. My seller's not ready. You want to do an extension of your time agreement. And there is a form, and I think Fred is doing that class, or Karen, that you will use to extend your time frame. So your offer did not expire. You want to keep everything within the time frame so your clients never lose the opportunity to purchase something because their time's expired. Number 30, many of you know all of this. Most of you probably do, because you just passed the tests, and the acceptance, the agreement. These are all just terms that we use in real estate. Days after, days prior, calendar days. So and you know what I tell my agents, if you're doing, right now we're not doing open houses, but when we're back, life gets back to normal and you're doing open houses, take your purchase agreements or your listing agreements with you to an open house. When you have downtime and you're sitting there and no one's coming through, read these contracts. Read them, take a highlighter and highlight them, and questions you have, go back to your manager. It's a great time to make use of downtime at an open house. I still do it today. I still take forms out there and go over them. Here's where I talked about the expiration time of the offer. And I typically put in that it does get back to me by a certain date. Now, if you're writing an offer, for example, on a Thursday, and you're going to deliver it to the agent, you probably want an answer back if you can by Friday before the weekend hits, because you don't want that property going all weekend and not getting an answer. So I try honestly to get my offers in and approved within 24 hours. You can't always do that. If the listing agent has put into the offer, there's a trust, or the people are out of state, or there's several trustees that have to look at the offer, you may need to give them a few days. But I typically try to get mine through in 24 hours if I can, just because I want my client to have the property. Here's the box below 31. If anyone is signing under the representative capacity signature form, you're going to mark that box. Joe Buyer is writing on this property. He signs here. Number 32, acceptance. This, I see this all the time. If you are representing a seller and they are just going to take the property and take the offer and they're good with it and they're signing it as Jane's seller, you're fine. If you're doing a counter offer, guys, and you're going to go back and forth with counters, mark this box right here. Don't forget to mark this, because it's saying that your seller, when you have your seller sign this, you're saying that Jane's seller is accepting this subject to these counter offers, that they are part of this offer. Okay, make sure you mark that little box. I use highlighters all the time, and I tell my agents, when you get an offer in, sit down with it and highlight everything. I think Fred taught you in class yesterday to make sure you look at what things are included and excluded. And I was explaining this morning, and Fred and I were talking. I had an agent many years ago that worked for me. She did not catch it. The seller had listed and told her that he was not including his outdoor fountain because it cost him $12,000. The offer came in, the offer had the fountain being included. She didn't catch it. Do you want to know what happened? She wrote a check to the seller for $12,000 when it closed. We do not want to see you give away your commissions. So make sure you pay attention. If you're representing the buyer, be very careful going through your forms. And if you're representing the seller, do the same thing. You have to use a highlighter so you don't miss things. Here is the final presentation of offer. This is where we put, and I always include, agents love this. If you're writing an offer, I was writing this offer, say on this property, I always fill in the listing agent's information. Some agents will say, please, they'll put in the listing, please fill in my information. But if they don't, do it as a courtesy. They see that and they see, wow, this person's on the ball. They filled in all my information. Your ability to let people know you know what you're doing and to get along with other agents is very important in this business. It may make a difference as to whether your offer goes or not. It's not supposed to, but agents like to know they're working with someone that's reliable and going to do the right things. Escrow holder acknowledgement. This is for escrow to fill out. They will acknowledge that they got this signed and delivered to them. If your offer is, if you get an email and it says, we did not accept your offer, we rejected it, I always tell my people to get this initialed. So that, especially now, because if an agent is going to sell the property themselves, you want to make sure that your client at least had the opportunity for their offer to be seen. So this is where they will mark that the seller, that the agent presented the offer on what day, and this is where the seller will initial that they rejected the offer. So at least you know the seller saw your offer. So I do ask for that on all my deals so that I can tell my client your offer was presented, it was rejected. Questions?
Nope, we're doing good.
We're good. Okay, buyer's inspection advisory. This is for the buyer. The seller doesn't sign this. This is telling the importance of having an inspection. These are all the things that the buyer is going to look at. We advise them to have the home inspection. We cannot force them. We're going to go over a form next where they opt out if they want to opt out. But they're advised to do this inspection for all these reasons. They're going to check the condition, the square footage, for termites, for pests, for the soil, utilities. I had a situation where I sold a property up in Oakview and the agent put in the inspection, in the MLS, that it was on sewer. Well, we went up there and we found out, the inspector said, there's no, I said, where's the sewer here? And he said, there is none. There's a septic tank in the yard. Well, that changed things a little bit. Septic's not bad, but you need to know about it. So my client requested a septic inspection and we found the tank was toast. It was absolutely no good. It was, it had to completely be replaced. I went back to that agent and said, we are requesting this not only because but you put the wrong information in the MLS and this has a septic tank. So you need to tell your seller. And I don't think the agent actually wanted to go back and tell the seller he made a mistake in the listing. So he convinced his seller to put in a $6,000 septic tank for us. So inspections are important for many, many reasons. Rental property restrictions in an area, you want to know about that. Neighborhood, I tell my clients to drive through when they when they're putting in an offer, drive through the neighborhood, drive through in the morning, drive through at night. Make sure you're happy with what you're buying. Don't tell them this is a good area or it's a bad area. That's not for us to tell them. Let them drive through and make themselves comfortable with their decision. Questions?
The only question is, when will this be recorded and how do we get it? Because this is great information.
We
That's
are
Karen,
recording.
she's the guru on the IT stuff.
Yeah, we are recording every session, so it'll be sent out, and then we'll also house it in the YouTube C21 Everest training under California.
There you go. Okay, California Consumer Privacy Act. We just got hit with another form this year. And it's funny, this happened in my office. Once we put things in the, we're not responsible, guys, for what Zillow picks up and all the other search engines, but the MLS, we put people's pictures into the MLS and a lot of information in the MLS. And sometimes clients become unhappy if we don't remove those pictures at the close. We had a lady walk in here and said, your agent, the agent didn't work for us anymore, so that was kind of good that they'd gone on. But she said, I bought this home and the pictures are still in here from when it was listed. And I don't want my home's pictures on the MLS for everyone to see, my yard and where the bedrooms are and this and that. We can remove things from MLS, but we are trying to disclose, we're trying to tell the people in here that there are things that are going to go out there. And again, if they hit the other search engines, we can't be responsible for that. We are not responsible for what third parties pick up and for what they put. But we can, and if they want to opt out of certain things, we can have them do that. So give them this form, make sure they read the form. Where are we? Whoops. Okay, contingency. Everybody gets hung up on this form. I actually talked to the car lawyers this week on this form because we went back and forth with another agent. If your clients are buying, they're purchasing a home, but they have to sell something, they are going to be contingent. You need to reference this form. I think Fred went over this with you yesterday. There's a box to reference this, contingency for sale of buyer's property. You reference this. You also put on the purchase agreement that you're including a COP form. This is the COP form. It has the length of the contingency period that you're asking for. The buyer's property is in escrow or is not in escrow, and how many days they have to get it in escrow. You go through this form, it tells you the seller's right to cancel after first giving them notice. Let me kind of, without going through this whole form, explain to you really what's important here. When you get down to number 8, this is where everybody gets hung up. If I am buying a home, but I have to sell my beach house, and I tell my agent, okay, I don't want them to cancel me. I'm going to need a few weeks to sell this. The boilerplate on this, number A, says within 3 days after my offer is accepted, the seller can cancel me if they get a better offer. And I tell my agent, no, I'm going to need like 3 weeks. I need at least 3 weeks to get my home in escrow and I don't want to be canceled in just a few days. You need to mark B, if checked, delayed right to notify. So the seller within either the first 17 days or 21 days or 30 days cannot cancel you and say, I have a better offer. Now, this little box is great if you can get it through. If you represent if you're representing your client and they have to sell their house and you click this little box during the term of the agreement, the seller is not going to, if they get a better offer, they can't just cancel you out. Your buyer now has a long-term contingency. Of course, until close, they have to be able to close on time. They can't just drag it out forever and ever. They do still have a close date. But I've had agents where they didn't catch it. They represented a seller and this was marked and they got a better offer and they said, we're going to give them a notice and we're going to cancel them. I said, you can't. You didn't catch this. This box was marked. So this little box on number 8B can cause a lot of havoc, guys, during the term of the agreement. And I was talking to the car lawyers just this week about it, and they told me they're changing this form. This form has been so confusing that CAR is actually going to change this and make it a little more user-friendly. But for any new agents, before you fill this form out, go over it with your manager. Please, please, please. I don't let any of my agents brand new fill out this form without having me look at it. It's to protect your client, yourselves, and the company, okay? It's a very important form. You want to do it correctly. It's part of your contract if your client is going to have to sell a property. Questions?
Well, not a question, but a statement. Can you lower the form a little bit, Helene?
Yep. Where are you, Fred?
7.
7. Okay, go.
Okay. I agree with Helene. Number 8 is really important, but 7 is also important because 7 is where the timelines start.
True. Very good.
And
yes.
So the default is the timelines, which is your inspection, your appraisal, your loan, everything starts right away. The box says timelines don't start until I'm in escrow. So if, there's 2 choices. One, we want everything to start right away. And what happens if you don't get into escrow for a week, 2 weeks, you've already done your inspections and all that and appraisal. So you want to work with your client to see which, typically as a seller, as a buyer, I like my timelines to start when I'm in escrow. As a seller, I want the timelines to start right away. So this way we know what issues are going to happen. So this is 7's another very interesting box that has a lot of conversations going both ways.
Yeah, true. And they don't. A lot of people don't want to lay out money for all those inspections and appraisal and everything. And we just had that too, where a seller said, no, I could get multiple offers. I'm going to take your offer, but I want you to get going now. So I know I have a solid deal.
Right.
Good point. Okay, hold on. Okay, now we're going to, oops, hang on. I want to go back to that form a second. The bottom of that form. At the bottom of this form, guys, there's a confirmation. And pay attention to that. Confirmation of receipt, that a notice was received. So this is, you want to know that this is filled out. A copy of this signed notice to buyer to remove contingencies and take action was delivered to the buyer or whoever it is, or to the agent. Because the agent does have, if you put their name in there, then they have the ability to receive documents from the clients. Here's the form, the SPRP for seller to be purchasing a replacement property. This one is a lot easier and a lot more user-friendly and people are not as freaked out about it. It's very clear that the seller's finding a replacement property. They have to acquire it. They have so many days to do that. They've entered into contract, close of replacement property. It's contingent on seller's ability to close the property. They talk about the time periods, the deposits, close of escrow. But both of these forms, you want to go through with your managers the first or second, or don't use these forms without really, if you're brand new, having your manager look it over because they are confusing, okay? One is for the buyer's gotta sell, the other seller's finding a replacement home. Let me get to, here's our inspection waiver. If your client tells you, I don't want to do any inspections, I don't want to pay for them, or I'm going to have my buddy, if it's not a home inspector, if it's just your friend who does contract construction, you want to use this form. Okay, if that's what they want to do, they get to do that. But here they either opt in or opt out. They don't want to do it. And it's in big letters. If you do not do so, you are acting against the advice of brokers. We always want to encourage our clients to do a home inspection. Again, it's their right, but here's where they are telling you, I don't want to do this. And some will say, I don't want to spend the money for that. But in big letters, again, they're telling you, you're acting against the advice of brokers. Okay, so that what we do is we advise. What they do, they make the decisions. It's a pretty easy form. Again, come to us if you have questions on the inspection waiver.
Okay, one question came up. With the contingency of purchase, when is that sent? Is that sent with the offer?
Yes, if they have to purchase another property, yes, you include it with your offer. If the COP goes with the offer, and there's a box on the purchase agreement that you also mark that says COP included, and I also type it in under additional terms where I put the Everest addendum.
And the seller's purchase goes with a counteroffer.
Counteroffer, correct. Now I did, on these counters, guys, I did a few because we have seller counteroffer, buyer counteroffer, and multiple. This is just a straight, you present your offer to me. Say I have the listing, because I typically just do listings. I give the buyers to the agents. You present your offer and the seller's going to come back with this form. This is just if we're one-on-one. It says may not be used as a multiple counteroffer. This is between myself and the clients. The paragraph requires initials, but are not initialed by all parties or excluded from the final agreement. So again, you have to have all people signing these things. This is where they type in. Here's an example. If you put an offer in on my listing and I don't like the price and I maybe want 30 days instead of 45 days, and I'm not going to leave my fountain that you asked for, I'm going to type it in here that seller is requesting sales price of $550. Seller will not leave the fountain. Seller wants a 30-day escrow. Anything, this is to change. You don't have to talk about anything that's in the offer. You don't have to list again if it's being accepted. This is just to change what the seller does not accept on the original purchase agreement. So you can consider it as a change form. So this is what the seller is going to put in here, what they did not care for about your offer, and send it back to you. So seller signs it. If you're good with it, you sign it. If your client says, yeah, I don't care about a 30-day escrow and I'll give him his fountain, but I'm not paying $500 or $550, you have to check this box, subject to the attached counteroffer, and you have to use this form. Buyer counteroffer number 1. Your client agreed to some of the things, but not all of them. Here is where you're going to make the change. It's going to say buyer will pay $475 or whatever your agreement is. Again, these are change forms. Always fill out the top though on here. Put the date that the offer that you're doing the form at the top. It's a counter to the to the seller's counter on this one. It would be a counter to the seller's counter dated. Look at the forms that are coming before this one and make sure you put in the correct dates. Dates are very, very important on these contracts, very important. Here's where the buyer will put, like I said, he wants to pay X amount and he makes the change on what he or she is willing to pay. And then they sign here. And the seller will either accept it or not. If they don't, we have to come back again with a seller counter number 2. Seller may say, okay, but I want $485. I had one with 7 or 9 counters one time. There were so many, I said to the agent, let's stop this and do this contract over. Escrow is never going to be able to put all these forms together. If the buyer, also important, I've had agents come to me and say, oh, the buyer does not want to deal with this anymore. They can withdraw their offer. If you see under 2B, there's a woo form. They can withdraw it prior to acceptance. If they just say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. There's forms for everything, you guys. You just have to look for them. And whenever we don't have one, they come up with another one. When I started in the business 37 years ago, I was writing contracts on carbon paper. It was like 4 pages on the back of my car. Now it's like craziness. This is a multiple counter. You're going to get this if you see this multiple counter at the top. Comes back to you this way. That means the listing agent has more than one offer. It could be 2, it could be 10. And you need to let your clients know that there are other people interested in this property. So time is of the essence. Get it back. It doesn't mean the first one that comes back is going to be accepted, but you want to move on this quickly because you want the seller to see you really are interested. Once the seller gets the counters back, they make the decision. A seller can take an offer. It may not be the highest offer. They may just like the people or know the people, or it's not contingent. There may be many different reasons the seller decides to accept or reject an offer. Okay? That's multiple. So if you see that up there, that means you're competing with other agents on your offers. Questions?
Well, there's a question and I'm going to make a statement. Can you explain? Okay, so the question is, can you explain the next escalation clause and how we could essentially in this market?
Yes, yes. And the first one I ever had was by an agent in the Ventura office. I had a little listing up in Ventura, and all of a sudden came this form. We didn't have a form for it then. He just wrote it in. He said, my buyer will pay $1,000 over any price, but he left it open, which I would not do. I always put a cap. So if you're writing an offer on my listing, you include an exclamation clause. You do the clause for I keep saying the word wrong. Escalation.
Escalation.
And you say, my client will pay $1,000 over highest offer, but I would always put a cap, not to exceed. Say the property's listed for $500 and you know everyone's going over, and your client writes the offer and they say, I will pay $1,000 over the high, or $5,000 over the highest offer, not to exceed $525. Because you can't just open it up and have, in case people start writing ridiculous offers, you want to make sure there's a cap. But the agent has to provide to you the contract to show that, yes, he had an offer of $520. And your client's offer of $525 is being accepted, and they are accepting the escalation clause, and that's what you have to. In this market, it's awesome. I just told 3 agents to use it. One of them, their buyer didn't want to use it. The buyer shied away from it. They were afraid of it. But that was because they weren't putting a cap on it. Put a cap on these things, because you don't want to just, you're not signing, nobody signs blank checks. So I like the escalation clause in this market as long as you cap it. Did that explain it to the person, or do they still have questions on that?
Well, I think Robbie, that explained Robbie.
But it's good, Robbie. Yes, use it. I'm telling you, I'm telling my people to use it because they want these homes. People are going crazy. It's just the crazy. Oh, when I started in real estate, the interest rates were 14.5%. Now they are what, 2.5%? I mean, it's just amazing. This is like the best market ever. Water conserving plumbing fixtures.
Wait. Oh, hold on, Lee. I want to make a statement about counter offers. First of all, counter offers they build upon each other. So just like Helene said, you only put things that you are changing. So if the seller's counter offer says, price to be this, escrow to be that, if you write a counter offer and you agree to the price, you don't have to rewrite it again. All you got to do is put whatever you are changing from the last offer.
Right, that's right. And if it becomes too many guys, like I said, I've had agents
Right.
just take all the counters, take all your stuff that you have together and rewrite this thing, because escrow's got to decipher. Escrow has to have all these pages to put your escrow instructions together. If you have 8 counter offers, they need your offer and all 8. So that's important. Yes.
And also make sure you number them correctly, because if you miss a
Yes.
number, escrow's going to ask you, where's that number?
Yes, yes, you do need to number them correctly. Absolutely. And that happens a lot where they don't, where people don't.
And Carolina, can you open up your mic and ask your question? Carolina, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Does she not?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay. There's an agent out there that will only do negotiations to avoid counters. What can we do about that?
What do you mean they'll only do? They'll only speak with you? Well, first of
Yes.
all,
They'll say my seller wants this, this, and this, and this, and go talk to your buyer. If they want to accept, then we'll accept their offer.
well, these contracts are not between us and the other agent to start with. They're between the buyer and the seller. And yes, I have had some agents say, this is what we're looking for. If you want to put it, but again, you put it in writing. You have to put it, nothing is verbal. Nothing in this business, it must be in writing. So I have had agents tell me that too. If you write me an offer of 500 and you do a 30-day escrow and you take out that fountain, we'll take your offer. I put it in writing and I send it back. So you are going to see that sometimes, but don't make your negotiating verbal. It's got to be in writing, because it's not between us realtors. It's between buyer and seller. We have to take ourselves out of that part of it. So yes, Carolina, it's okay if they tell you what they're looking for, but make sure
Yeah,
you
well,
put it.
what he does is he says, okay, send me your offer again after a seller verbally agrees.
I would be going back to him and asking for a counter. That's what I would say. I need you to put that in writing. I need your seller to put that. And if you have a problem, go to, I was your manager, now it is Lewis, go to your manager.
Okay.
I have made calls on that and told the agent, put it in writing. You need to do this correctly. We need counter offers. If you want to rewrite your entire offer, that's totally up to you, but that's not how we do it. That's what counters are for. They're to change things that are different. You are going to get that. You know what? Not everybody does contract training, and not everybody has a company like ours that teaches them. So they just do sloppy stuff and they do verbal all the time. But verbal's not going to hold up, nor are emails, and say to write an email and say, okay, my guy agrees to pay this amount. Use the forms, put it in writing. If you're really having a problem, go to one of your managers, go to me, go to Lewis. We will help you through. Because I know what you're saying. I see it out there too, where they do the same thing with me.
I feel like they're just doing that because they want to get more money for their buyer, because in the meantime, they'll say, oh, we got another offer.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're sloppy. Not, you know, sadly, not everybody, again, does it right. Not everybody has the training. You can be in this business for a lot of years and you're still not doing it the right way. That's why we offer so much at this company in training, is because we want you to learn to do it right. And I know you do your stuff correctly. I've sat with you and done counter forms. So
Alrighty,
no,
thank
it's
you.
got to be in writing. But if you're really having a problem with someone, go to your manager, go to me, we will help you. I make a lot of calls to other agents, believe me, during the day. And my agents get fed up and they're like, help. So writing, counter offers, we want to use the form, okay?
Yeah.
Water conserving plumbing fixtures. Okay, new laws came into effect. This is really a point of sale for us. In LA, they're required to change them out, the water conserving fixtures. I just put fixtures in my bathroom, and after they signed off on them, I took out the little part because I want a whoosh shower. I want a lot of water. But the rules are now is they want everything water conserving. You must give this, this is a paper you must give at the point of sale. You're going to get it from the seller. They should give it to you with all the disclosures. And they're disclosing on whether they have low flow toilets, low flow sinks. They don't have to change them here in Ventura County. In LA County, they have to change them out. You have to, I don't know of any other counties. Fred, you're out by LA County. Do they?
It's actually LA City they need to change
LA
it out.
City does, okay.
LA County
City
was still okay.
requires- Okay, this is just a compliance form telling you, some people are, you may have a buyer, I had this happen to me. I had a buyer that said, no, I want that stuff low flow. I want to ask the seller to do it with my offer. If they're that hung up on it, put it in your offer, let them know. The things that we are required to have are carbon monoxide, smoke detectors, braced water heater. But this, as far as the low flow fixtures, we just have to disclose it. And in the TDS that we're going to go over on Friday, the seller answers that question, whether they do or they do not have low flow fixtures in their home. You're supposed to have them. A lot of people don't care for them.
And don't forget those carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors
Yeah.
have to be in the property prior to the appraiser coming out. Otherwise, the appraiser is not going to complete the appraisal and will have to come back to see when they are installed to release the appraisal. So,
And they charge $150 to come back. They used to, when I started years ago, 37, they used to let us take a picture of it if it
Right.
wasn't in. They don't want that anymore. They want to charge the $150 and they want to come back. You're absolutely right, Karen. They want to,
throw a couple of them in your trunk at all times.
I keep them in my car at all
Yeah.
times. Absolutely, just to have them there. Because that is required. You're not going to get around that one. That we have to have. I think we got through everything for today on our list. I don't have, the rest of the forms I have are for Friday. So I think, are there any other questions that you guys have that we didn't hit on
You
here?
know, I did, Helene, one of the things I just want to go back to is just the COP and the SPRP to see if anybody has any questions at all. Those are the two forms that I think even with experienced agents, there's a lot of confusion on the contingency of sale and the seller replacement.
There is, and that's why the car lawyer told me. She said we're changing. She said they're hoping to have it done in the next year. Because I said, oh God, we're doing a class. When are you changing it? And she said, no, it'll be in the next year. But people are really confused with that form. So,
yeah, I'm glad to hear that they're going to make that a little bit more user.
That's what they said, user friendly, because it's not user friendly.
Right.
Let me go back. You guys can see the hands. If somebody had questions, holler. But again, new people, don't fill out this form without going to your manager. You'll learn it. It's just confusing and you have to use it. If your client says, I can't buy unless I sell, boom, that triggers a form. You got to have it. Don't forget these things.
So I know one of the questions that comes up is just the very first part. You know, you have it defaults to 17 days to find a replacement property. And then after that time period, it needs to be negotiated out to extend it or you cancel, one of the two. So, and timing that replacement property, I think there's also confusion on the close of escrow date. Obviously, if they buy a replacement property and that replacement property wants a 30-day escrow, then they've got to go back to theirs and make sure they can do that on the one that they're selling.
Correct. Yeah, the numbers have to work. And sometimes you have to shorten inspection dates down to 10 days to coincide with the property you're listing or selling. Or so that's why I said these forms have to work together. And you have to be careful. Karen's right there. They are confusing and they do hang us up.
And also, if you don't check C, it's not contingent on you closing your house.
Correct. That's
so
very
there's
important.
two parts. The part is finding the replacement property, home
and
of
closing.
And closing.
Yep. I just had one where I told my agent, make sure you mark that box because your people cannot remove that contingency. They cannot buy without, they have to. So.
And be careful when you're removing contingencies, because if you remove this form, you just remove that concurrent close.
Go down to the
Correct.
bottom, Helene, on this one. I think it's on this form here.
Where do you want to go, Fred?
The bottom of this form?
The bottom? Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. Here?
Yeah. Okay, not here. Oh, it's on the
The
CR
COP,
form.
are you talking about the COP?
No, on the CR form, there's actually the bottom section where you can remove home of choice contingency
Right here, yeah,
and still keep, your concurrent close.
right.
So there's two separate contingencies. Don't
One is
remove them
finding
both.
the home, the other is closing it,
Right.
correct?
So don't
Correct.
remove them both.
Yeah, be really careful, guys, and like that box I showed you on there, don't remove your contingencies with your offers. Unless you've got an investor guy that says, I want this house, I'm removing all contingencies today, I just want it. I'm just gonna buy it and close, I'm not doing any inspections. And make darn sure you use the form where you suggested they do the inspections and they
Right.
turn that down. So, so this is kind of concludes the buyer section of our class. And Karen is going to be doing, tomorrow we have office meetings. So Thursday, Karen, you're doing seller documents, correct?
Correct. I'm going to be doing the listing contract and advisories, the SELM. We'll be talking a little bit about, this current situation with office exclusive and coming soon, and just all the forms related to taking a listing. So we'll be covering.
Okay, and then Friday I'm back on and I'll be doing the TDS, the SPQ, really important forms that you never ever want to fill out for your clients. They must do them themselves. So, okay, if everybody's good, we'll see you on Thursday.
All right.
Great
thanks,
class, Helene.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Call us anytime. Any managers are available to you anytime. And all of you that are new, I want to tell you something. I wanted to be a teacher 37 years ago. That didn't work out for me. I got into real estate. It is the best decision I ever made. You can make lots of money. I was able to take great care of my family as a single parent. I have things that I never could have had except for this business. So you've made a wonderful choice. Stay in it, work hard, and you will reap the rewards of this. I promise you if you work hard. Okay,
All
bye
right.
guys.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.